Hello everybody, my name is Pilani Zamchiya. I'm here to present a paper on patronage politics in food production. I'm really sorry that I could not be with you today. It would have been nice to have a more interactive discussion. I understand that I have about 20 to 30 minutes, so I'll try to be brief. Last week I was doing a presentation with some government officials, and I spent about the first 7 minutes doing salutations and protocols. I'm happy that I don't have to do that here, so let me go straight away into the issue. So the question is, what has been happening on fast-track resettlement schemes since 2000 in terms of crop and food production? Most scholars have argued that production has been mainly related to differential access to land holdings, farming inputs, labor, tillage, extension services, income, and social networks. Fair enough, but we need to go beyond and interrogate how farmers have been gaining access to farming inputs for a complete picture of the post-2000 Zimbabwe patronage story in food production and distribution, which is my argument today. So first, I'll take you through how patronage has been central in the government programming in post-2000, or more aptly, party-state programming. Second, I'll give evidence from my study in Chipinge district, then explore the dynamics of food availability. First, party-state programming. From year 2000, the party state has been involved in various command schemes on resettlement farms. The schemes included Operation Maguta Situti or Operation We Are Full, which was launched in November 2005. This was a command agriculture program that placed food production under the control of the Zimbabwe National Army. Under this program, small-scale farmers in the communal areas and on the resettlement schemes were given fertilizers and seed to boost food production in the country. The army would then take the grain harvests for submission to the Grain Marketing Board in order to build strategic grain reserves, and would leave farmers with what they, the soldiers, thought was enough for their consumption. The former Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe governor, Gideon Gono, who funded the program, articulated the program from an economic viewpoint. I quote, "Under this program, no doubt a huge food gap will be closed, effectively saving foreign exchange to go towards other priority sectors of the economy," close quote. However, as Mudzonga and Chigwada write, I quote, "The selection of the recipients of Maguta is done firstly at the village level by the crowheads. The list of beneficiaries from the village is taken to the ward level, where it is finalized by the village heads together with the ward councillors. The list is then passed on to members of the army, who then approve the release of the inputs, which are usually kept at GMB depots," close quote. So the control of food production and distribution served patronage politics for the military. And in some cases, Maguta was characterized by violence. Livelihoods of people were destroyed as the villagers who grew market or export crops instead of planting maize were beaten up. As one reporter observed, I quote, "Soldiers placed under Operation Maguta have been accused of beating, ill-treating, and denying villagers and plot holders food, despite forcing them to work for long hours without rest," close quote. This happened at Fatima Farm, located about 40 kilometers south of Lupane in Matabeleland North. But such stories were similar across the nation, as some villagers were beaten and displaced at Kondozi Farm in Manicaland by the army. And so under Maguta, the rural areas became no-go areas for non-opposition supporters, as the army was not only concerned with food production, but strengthening the ZANU-PF support base. However, Like many command agriculture schemes operation, Maguta failed to reach its economic target of increasing maize production. Bureaucrats in the ministry, they became sidelined as agricultural production became politicized. Some farm implements were distributed a few weeks before the general elections of March 29, 2008, prompting Tendai Biti, the then Secretary General of the MDC, now President of PDP. As you know, we have many presidents in Zimbabwe, and I'm also one. He said, I quote, "Now 2 weeks before the election, he, former Reserve Bank Governor Gono, is aiding ZANU-PF to buy votes through the distribution of tractors and farm implements," close quote. Biti went further to describe Gono as, I quote, "an economic saboteur, terrorist, and number one Al-Qaeda who deserves to be shot by a firing squad," close quote. And a week before the national election, on March 23, 2008, Gono in his response admitted that ZANU-PF was using state resources to show up its waning political fortunes. I quote, "Should I therefore be put before a firing squad because the ruling party, therefore government, has sent me to do so now? If the ruling ZANU-PF party chooses to ride on these modest positive pursuits, is it the governor to account for that?" Close quote. Gono lobbied for support for President Mugabe in the same interview. I quote, "President Mugabe deserves to be rewarded by the voters if they, on their own, judge that the farm mechanization program is a good one and that it is succeeding because the president is behind it. That cannot be said to be a March 29, 2008 campaign strategy. But if it is, then surely there is nothing wrong with it because it is part and parcel of the democratic process," close quote. Then at a national level, by election time, 3,000 tractors, 105 combined harvesters, 1,733 disc harrows, 100,000 plows, 78,000 scotch carts, 200,000 chains, and 2,000 planters were redistributed to farmers across the country. For the sub-program called Strategic Food Program, combined harvesters, animal drone harrows, fertilizer spreaders, grinding mills were also distributed across. And when brought before Parliament to name the beneficiaries, Gideon Gono refused to reveal the names of those beneficiaries. He said that the Reserve Bank Act forbids bank staff from disclosing information. This prompted the ZANU-PF Goromon's North legislator, Janda, the member of parliament, to walk out of the meeting in protest. However, there is a report from the Ministry of Agricultural Engineering, Mechanization and Irrigation Development, which showed that the major beneficiaries were cabinet ministers, ZANU-PF MPs, and civil servants who received the tractors and farm implements. So ZANU-PF MPs, ministers, and state security officials were also implicated in using their power and influence to acquire huge amounts of fuel, supposedly for agriculture, but also selling it on the black market. For example, the then ZANU-PF Manicaland Provincial Chairman, Shadrack Chipanga, received 66,576 liters of fuel on 15 November. He suspiciously claimed to have used all the fuel for farming activities. The then Manicaland Governor, Tinaya Chigudu, received 10,000 liters of fuel, and other ZANU-PF MPs and cabinet ministers in Manicaland province also benefited. Now, post-2013, we hear of this Commander Agriculture, whose flag bearer is Emerson Mnangagwa, a leading or a limping horse in succeeding President Mugabe, depending with your factional wishes. Government had to produce 2 million tons of maize on 400,000 hectares of land for this 2016 to 2017 season with $500 million US. You know, you can actually buy close to 2 million tons of maize with $500 million. But let us leave that aside. Available data indicates that 500 million US was used to plant only 153,000 hectares out of the 400,000 hectares targeted threshold, meaning that the program achieved less than half of its targeted output. So we have $500 million US which went to these networked elites, including the military. And it's obviously going to be a taxpayer's burden, if we were seen with the debt, that is the RBZ debt before. And the program, the Command Agriculture program, also had its problems. It was plagued by poor execution, logistical problems, which saw many farmers receiving their inputs late. And there has been a nationwide shortage of top-dressing fertilizers. Under this program, beneficiaries were expected to produce 5 tons per hectare and give the 5 tons to government. I want to say, these farmers will struggle to produce 5 tons per hectare in some regions. The reality is that there are regional variations, and the national average production of maize is 0.8 tons per hectare. In my study of Chipinge district, the average maize yield per hectare was 1.4 tons. Even if you look at Schoon's and others' seminal book on Mashingo, if you look carefully and closely, despite the positive picture that they paint, there is no resettled farmer in Mwenezi, for instance, who harvested more than a ton of maize in 2004 to 5, 2006 to 7, 2007 to 8, and 2008 to 9 agricultural seasons. Matond also observed that in Mangwe district, maize production was also in ruins. The highest recorded maize yield per hectare since 2003 was 0.6 tons, and that was once in the 2004 to 2005 season. In better areas like Mamazowe, the average yield per hectare was 2.5 tons per hectare. For Shamva, it averaged 1 ton per hectare, and qualified him as one of the successful farmers in terms of yields per hectare. But the Agri-Tax officials were not happy with the politicized identification of champion farmers, as they felt their technical roles had been usurped, and that such a process resulted in bad harvests. As one official explained, I quote, "We are the ones who should identify the master farmers, because this is what we were trained to do. The traditional leaders know little about farming, and this is causing the poor low-yield harvest," close quote. However, the ZANU-PF ruling elite was more interested in empowering traditional leaders by giving them sources of patronage than in increasing productivity. Another Agri-Tax officer in Chief Mahenye's area in Chipinge explained the phenomenon, and I quote, "Fair distribution of inputs became a challenge as the system was politicized. Our roles were systematically transferred to partisan traditional leadership and war veterans, which resulted in tested farming methods being compromised. Agri-Tax officials, as farming experts, were supposed to distribute inputs according to requirements of individual farmers, type of soil, and hectareage. But directives came from top ZANU-PF officials on how to distribute the inputs. Our expertise was insulted. Traditional leaders such as chiefs and headmen were automatically classified as suitable candidates to benefit from the Champions Farmers program. This contributed towards poor harvest in the country," close quote. Some studies have assumed that the mobilization of agricultural resources in fast-track resettlement schemes was mediated by the market, if not by technocrats. But post-2000, Chipinge offers a different picture. In January 2011, I witnessed traditional leaders receiving seeds and fertilizer from the Presidential Input Scheme at the GMB depot in Chipinge town for distribution to their subjects. Prior to the allocation of the presidential inputs, ZANU-PF slogans were chanted with fists punching in the air, Pamperina Comrade President Mugabe, forward with the president. The traditional leaders mediated farmers' access to inputs that were in effect personalized as gifts from President Mugabe. This showed ZANU-PF's strategy of investing power in traditional leaders who were expected to pay the party back in showing loyalty. President Mugabe had launched the farm input scheme on 11 November 2010 and has been launching it annually. And one of the chiefs from Chipinge explained, I quote, "We were there when the president launched the scheme in Harare last year, and I am grateful that the inputs have finally reached us here just 2 months after. I am grateful to the president. He understands that real politics is about people's livelihoods. You cannot then say Mugabe is bad. Tirikutonga Mfana, we are ruling young men. I will make sure I distribute the inputs equally to each deserving household." In close quote. In practice, however, the inputs were distributed disproportionately to relatives of the chief and ZANU-PF supporters. As one of the MDC MPs in Chipinge explained, I quote, "The chiefs were assisted by the soldiers and local ZANU-PF structures to distribute the seats. In the process, some ZANU-PF members who want to stand on the ZANU-PF ticket in the next parliamentary election were at the center of distribution as a launch to their campaign. People had to buy a new ZANU-PF card which cost $1 to be eligible for the inputs. Our MDC supporters did not receive the inputs. In some cases, they were using the ZANU-PF list of supporters, which is kept by the village heads and verified by ZANU-PF local leaders and aspiring ZANU-PF councillors and members of parliament. But some of the war veterans resold their inputs and squandered the money on beer," close quote. In sum, as Magure writes, a complex network of patrons and clients mediate the allocation of these scarce resources to the benefit of those willing to show continuous loyalty to ZANU-PF. Such practices in Chipinge were inherently linked to agricultural production. Given the shortages of inputs and limited financial capital among the land reform beneficiaries, access to farming inputs was both an important source of patronage and a mark of differentiation in crop production. One's position in the government bureaucracy also played a role in determining the way some resettled farmers gained access to resources. The local bureaucracy had become politicized. They looted some inputs. As one of them said, "These guys are corrupt and should be investigated and be arrested. The problem is the whole system is rotten. Something is rotten in the state of Denmark." The police were also implicated in the web of patronage. As a respondent further indicated, if they loot 3 bags of fertilizer, they give 1 to the investigating officer. Some of these officers have got farms, and it is part of their strategy to gain access to the scarce resources. The people who are supposed to arrest are also corrupt. When I asked him whether everyone in the local bureaucracy was now corrupt, he clarified, "No, you cannot say everyone is corrupt. Some of us are still committed to see things being done in the right way for the development of our country. However, we are frustrated by these corrupt officials with protection from the party, ZANU-PF. If it was possible, we could just weed out the rotten corrupt officials." For his party, he noted that he earned little money but was also evasive in mentioning the source of his agricultural inputs, which had resulted in such a bumper harvest by comparison to other farmers. Other factors outside patronage and corruption are certainly important, but of essence is that crop production is not just shaped by the economic and policy environment, but by the political context, that of patronage. And on that note, I want to thank you, and I hope there are also familiar faces like Sana, Arnold, MacDonald, Professor Jos Chofamba Story. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.